You want some? I'll give you some of mine.
I know, right? That's exactly the reason. I have them over at my house all the time, and then I can say goodbye.
With 8 brothers and sisters.
I got a bazillion nephews. Right. Yeah. You know, I went 24 hours on trampoline with all the nieces and nephews, and I beat them. Oh, they were exhausted. I had a bottle of Advil afterwards, but I beat them. You know, they're like little elves. They just flew like popcorn.
Yeah.
But again, it's just your eyes have to be there. It's probably the most important profession in the world. It gets some of the least respect and support. I don't know why we don't have universal daycare. I mean, we're the only people who don't.
Please tell me about it. I know.
You know, it's just one of those things where if you're going to put your money where something is going to be cost effective and for future results. I mean, again, I don't think long-term thinking is an American. I mean, people in general, but certainly America is not great at that one. Right. I mean, I come from a history point of view with that. There's so little respect for history, which had its benefits. You know, we're not tied down to staid and old ideas and very innovative. But on the other hand, if you don't know something's history, you don't know that thing. If you're going to talk politics, know where things came from. There's a need for quick and easy, and there always has been. If you go back into history, any politics, anything, give me the simple one that I can quick put in my pocket and feel comfortable with. Life's gray.
Well, I'd love to put my kids back in the 1800s and give them a little taste. I mean, heck, even the early 1900s.
Did you ever see? Oh, that's such a good idea. But reality television, most of it should just be in the toilet.
Oh, yes.
They had this great one on PBS. Did you ever see 1900 House?
No.
I would force my kids, if I had them, I would lock them to the TV. A family had to come live, a modern British family had to come live in a 1900, built in 1900, and live as they did in the year 1900.
Oh,
that's nothing else. And that's a wood stove, so the poor mothers are trying to regulate temperature on a burning fire.
Yeah.
There's cleaning, that you would clean things with these toxic chemicals just because they had the idea about infection in those days. There's no entertainment. There's no phones. It was fascinating to see kids and everything. How you had to spend the time together at night.
I hope some of those were teen kids because those are the ones that really need to appreciate it.
They were smart. Exactly. All the electronics are gone. And they had to have a maid, and the maid, poor thing, she had quit. They had to find another person to volunteer. Because remember, you're walking up and down stairs with everything.
Oh, yeah.
It was fascinating. 1900 House. If you can Google it or something, if they had copies, I would force any kid to watch it. I thought that was the only reality TV I ever saw that was worth it. Then they did another one to be on the prairie in a cabin, a prairie farmer one, which was brilliant too. But yeah, there. Have them.
And I watched a lot of PBS. I don't know how I missed that one, so I'm going to have to check it out.
This was years ago. Sure. And Google it. I would be curious. I've never Googled it again because it was obviously a British production. And it was wonderful. It was just great to see. And the kids went through all the stages. This is awful. And you had to go shopping, and you could only buy the things that were made in the 1900s.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So if you didn't have it, you had to make it.
I could so picture their faces and what was going through their minds, and I love every minute of it.
Yeah. I loved it. Just from a history perspective, it's like, this is fascinating. Who knew?
Exactly. And I love those shows, and I do make my children, well, not so much anymore because they're pretty much grown, but I used to make them sit and watch things like that, or I'd make them watch some talk shows that had a topic about bullying or about alcohol or drugs or school-related things or abuse, men don't hit women. And if, telling my daughter, I have 3 boys and 1 daughter, and I would tell them, the boys, you watch this is what you don't do to women, and telling my daughter, and this is what you don't let happen to you, that kind of thing. And it stuck with them. I mean, as they got older, I found out more and more that the things that you really say to them and you don't think they're paying attention, it happens.
Yeah. It's interesting what they absorb, but mainly, again, how we treat each other,
Right.
It's so interesting, and I'm still so fascinated. Even in kindergarten, when I would look at the kids I was teaching, they are fully fledged personalities.
Yes.
Again, they don't say that way, but I'm looking at them going, serial killer, doctor, lawyer. It's that clear to you at that time. And they were adorable. They were great. I loved kindergarten. Hardest job I've ever done physically.
Yeah.
Kindergarten was amazing.
trying to get them to sit still for any amount of time.
Oh, you have to be faster than them. That's why it was exhausting. You have to outthink them. The teachers I was working with, I'm like, you people are twice my age almost. You are gods.
Right?
Because they were just sneaky. And the one thing it gave me, I had such a good memory from acting, I could memorize seating charts in a minute. And there's nothing more terrifying to a child to have his name called by a stranger right off the bat, a teacher. It's like, oh, I'm spotted.
Yeah. Now I can't get away with anything.
No, right? Exactly. And I do just enough Spanish to make them think I was fluent. And they go, Mr. LeBlanc, you speak Spanish? I'd go, no. And I go, siéntate, por favor. And they go, Mr. LeBlanc, you speak Spanish. They would never try it again. You know, I knew very little, but I could pronounce it perfectly.
Well, how about French, since you're in New Orleans?
French, I'm in my third year of it now, of tutoring. I'm in the middle of my third year. They send us to, under the heading of education's wasted on kids, I took Russian because there's a language requirement in medical schools back in the day. They have them, the good ones have put them back. But it was either Russian, German, English, one of the science languages. And I took Russian because I was fascinated with the history. And I can spell it, and my vocabulary is crazy. I can still pronounce it all. But now, on my own, I've had a French tutor. We're number one in France, by the way, Young-and-the-Restless. So I'm not above playing that. I want to move there, and I'm self-taught in my art, and I want to go to school there. When I finally get to go and act there. And I do my interviews now when they have this television festival in Monte Carlo. They send us to every year. And all the CSIs are there, and Y&R&B and Bold and Beautiful are huge there, so they send a contingent. And I'm doing my interviews in French. They're very patient. It's very slow.
Yeah.
But I have a ball. I have it tomorrow every Saturday, 2 hours at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Well,
I love it.
believe 100% in keeping on going to school and learning new things, even if you only take one class, once a year. Yeah. Just to keep going that.
No such thing as retirement.
Right.
I don't think you change what you do, but I've never seen a successful. I mean, you travel for a while if you want, and even travel is your passion. But I mean, I don't know if we can anymore financially. But even then, I've seen people who, without a plan, just kind of implode. I like the thought. I love. I can do art when I'm an ancient person. Yeah, I can act when I'm old. That's one of those professions where they're not going to put you out to pasture because you physically can't do it anymore. They can, if you're good enough, you can go to, or lucky enough, both of them, you can go on. But it's I love, like I said, it's one of those passions, and it keeps you pliable. It's like I like hanging out. It's wonderful to be with the kids who come on the show or anyone, and you have to remember what excitement is and what. The idea of endless possibility is. Because if you lose those two things, you just get old. I mean, then you're done.
That's
there's a certain flexibility there that I could be really calcified. I know I can. And they come in and you want, for me it's like, do you want other jobs? Do you want this book to sell? Well, you know what? Everyone would be doing it if it were easy. And you've got to maintain the same enthusiasm and energy that you had when you were in your 20s because that's how it gets done. So make it happen. It's one of those things we were talking about. Poor Josh, has this knee injury, and we were talking about it. And my dad, 87, still goes to the gym. Is like, never stop moving. You just can't stop moving.
Right. I think that's what keeps my 90-year-old grandmother going. She's been near death quite a few times, but she keeps herself busy, and she's in one of the retirement areas in California, and she plays games and she talks with her friends, and she keeps going, and I think that's what
God bless. She's a gift, 90. Gosh.
Yes, and believe me, she's really. There was one time I flew out there because they said, "All right, that's it. You got to come and say goodbye." Well, they didn't know my grandmother.
That's funny. Well, yeah, I mean, it is. It's so, I find myself, you can feel yourself getting kind of in your old ways and kind of, cranky and ornery, and it just doesn't, there's too much to do, But it's and again, for your acting even, for life in general. It's like I said, the idea of having a certain amount of years to work and then you're going to have just one profession your whole life is kind of getting antiquated as it is. You might as well kind of, spread out.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you were doing the genealogy, did you find anybody that was famous that you were related to?
I do. Actually, I did it for everyone. I found our executive producer's real father. I done it for Liz Hendrickson. She's Dutch all the way back to when the middle of Queens was just a village, and her family's from Valley Springs still. Jess Walton. I like doing it for friends. I've done mine, the LeBlancs. The Cajuns are pretty easy because there's so many of them. There's like 100 families interbred, so people have done it. But it's the hardest to get back to great-great-grandfather. I'm still surprised that people don't know their great-grandfathers' names. But I got the LeBlancs to 1650. And it's a big,
wow.
I think a third of all Cajuns are LeBlancs, so it's a massive family. But, yeah, my mother's is interesting because we're African-American on her side. My great-great-great-grandmother, father owned my great-great-grandmother. I have a receipt.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
This is New Orleans. With most of the South, it's not an uncommon story, but in New Orleans there was my email is Free Man of Color. There was a certain middle class of free African Americans who didn't have citizenship, but they owned property, and they could live as close as they could to being free. And actually, when the Americans started coming in and replacing the French laws, they got very strict about it. So eventually you had to, if you wanted to get your parents out of slavery or something, you had to buy them and own them. So it's a very interesting genealogy down there. But then she's a Creole, so she goes right back to French royalty. And I've got her to the Crusades pretty much. Once you lock into some kind of, it's 1575, the king said you've got to keep church records. So that's the earliest kind of a peasant can be found. But if you lock in, and there's so many at that point, and everyone's related to Marie Antoinette at a certain point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even me.
Exactly. But it goes back to the Crusades, parts of her family, and to minor nobility early on. Her first part of her family that came over to Louisiana was the son of a sea captain who fought Napoleon. And we have actually in one of the universities, they had the documents. His passports were handwritten then, and they have a physical description of him because there was no photography. It's so interesting. He had a big nose and a round chin. You know what I mean? You're reading it in French.
Right.
So, yeah, I find it endlessly fascinating. I think, again, it goes along with, I didn't know I had any actors in my family. And then, a great-great-great uncle is writing my lineal descendant, his brother, saying, I'm doing a play. It's been a bad year. The theater collapsed in Nantes. And, it's this letter of an actor.
Wow.
And then
I would love to read that.
Yeah, it's just, I have them. I have copies of papers, and I've been doing it for years now. And now, finally, after Katrina, I had been taking all my family's pictures and stuff, and I started making albums now. And I've redone things. And it's so easy over the Internet to get pictures from wide parts of the family that, I will make that phone call to a family that we're related to but has never met and just say hi. I've got really good at that.
That's got to blow them away.
Oh, it's amazing sometimes. And I'll throw the Y&R card, even makes it better. Send me your records.
Yeah.
But you can lift pictures right off Facebook now, and I can keep everyone up to date on the new babies and stuff like that. I love it. I think it's so important to know these things on a certain level, not to trap you in them, but again, to know where you've come from is really interesting. Exactly. I found that what people went through to get you where you are today.
Well, I looked into doing something like that, but unfortunately it's a little bit hard to do on my father's side because my father was adopted, and we don't have any records. We can't access any records for his adoption while he's still alive because he doesn't want to know. Yeah,
see. That my uncle I never was able to find. We found out, and in those days they kept secrets. The first thing first thing you step for any of this is you go talk to your oldest relative.
Right.
But in those days they didn't talk about divorce or adoption or anything. My mother remembers that's what everyone said. You'd walk in the room and everyone switched to French.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You just switched to French.
I could see that happening too.
Yeah, over and over again. If it was Yiddish or it was anything. As soon as the kids came in. And then they just wouldn't. I didn't know people were divorced in my family till I was an adult, and an older relative let it slip. It's that kind of thing. like, really?
Oh my
Divorce
God,
you're
wow.
worried about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something that happened to me when I was 16. My grandmother ended up telling me something I didn't know, and I was just blown away. Like, but she thought I would take it the wrong way, and I didn't. I